Hey friends, I want to talk a little bit about some things that have been discovered as they poll people in America about their level of awareness of kind of what's going on in the Bible. Do you know that 12% of people who are polled think Joan of Arc was Noah's wife? More than half of high school seniors can't name all 10 commandments. High school seniors are also likely to believe that Sodom and Gomorrah were a married couple. And many Americans, when polled, believe that the man who delivered the Sermon on the Mount was Billy Graham. Now, as we think about this, it's kind of clear that there is a problem of religious literacy. And I know you can hear where this is coming from, and that we assume this is something our grandparents would talk to us about, how kids these days just don't know the Bible, and that's not at all what I'm saying here. In fact, this has been a problem that has existed for generations. And I want us to think a little bit about this today, because I know as you hear this, we might be thinking, well, this is a problem for the church, and you might be right. But there's one author that I think has made a really helpful contribution who says this isn't just bad for the church. This is bad for the country, and it's bad for the world. And so today I'd like to introduce you to one of my absolute favorite books, and it's called Religious Literacy, and it's by an author named Stephen Prothero. And what Prothero argues, he's a historian, what he argues is that our awareness of our faith and of the faith of others is central to what it even means to be a human. He doesn't think that people are able to appropriately interact with the world, whether it be reading the newspaper or interacting with their neighbors, or much less voting, without a proper understanding of the religious motivations we all have. And I think we understand this. Think about 9/11 without knowing anything about the interaction between militant Islam versus commercialized Christianity. It's important to know that. Or think about trying to understand the conflict in the Holy Land and not knowing why three faiths believe that that piece of real estate is critically important. Or even just think about our own neighborhoods, how to function and understand the values of our international neighbors who might be Buddhist, Hindu, Confucius, and this wide palette of different beliefs if we know nothing about their faith. And so Prothero says this isn't just an argument to make your Sunday school better. This is an argument to make the world better. And he believes that religious literacy is vital for how we do this. And so I just want us to think through kind of what his proposal is, because it's so important when we think about this. How well can we represent our faith if we know nothing about it? I mean, how credible is it for people to say, this is my life and this is my belief and I'm staking everything I have on it, and I only know 5 of the commandments and I don't know really anything else? And so that's something I really think is worth looking at. He's going to have a few questions here. That's a fun quiz you might want to play. If you're following us on Facebook, you might even want to type some of the answers in. But so he kind of lays out a quiz. He just says, kind of, in the broad scope of religious literacy, what do you know? So he'll ask ones that might make us feel good. What are the 4 Gospels? List as many as you can. Or he might say, where according to the Bible was Jesus born? What are the first 5 books of the Old Testament? And you feel good about yourself if you know those. But then he'll ask some that might make us feel a little more uncertain. Name a sacred text of Hinduism. What's the holy book of Islam? Blessed are the poor in spirit. Where is that found? Name the 10 Commandments. What are the 4 noble truths of Buddhism? And so what Prothero does here is basically goes through and makes an argument that knowing these things are very important for who we are. And I want to talk about this a little bit, because I don't think what he's saying here is maybe what we always think. You know, sometimes we think about information of the Bible as being trivia. And so we have trivial facts in our minds that don't seem to mean a whole lot in the Bible, but we can't seem to forget them. And so you might know that Methuselah was the oldest man, or you might know certain details of stories in the Bible where people conquered beasts or giants or things like that. That's not really what Prothero is doing here. For him, it's not just the amassing of trivia. That's not what he thinks this. He believes this literacy is more about appreciating the core of a religion and not just tangential facts. Prothero also doesn't think that this is evangelistic, and so he does think that religion should be taught in public schools, but he doesn't see it as a way of teachers proselytizing their students. He doesn't think that teaching religion means teaching a person what they should do to be saved, or teaching religion should be persuading people to believe it. He just thinks that it's more about appreciating and understanding what the religion is trying to communicate on its own terms, not as some sort of evangelistic appeal. He also doesn't think that teaching religion has to be sectarian. And so it's not so to say that by understanding other people's religions, we will understand to weigh them against each other, so that you'll believe Judaism is better than Islam, or you'll know Christianity is better than Hinduism. That's not what he's doing. Instead, what Prothero is saying is that it's just hard to know everything about everything else. Science, technology, engineering, and math. And it's hard to say that that's where we should put all of our energy and appreciate all of that knowledge, and then not know religion, which ultimately lies behind the motivation for how we use our science, our technology, our engineering, and our math. And so there might be a case in which all of the technical sciences and things might teach us things like how to build a missile, but it might be religion that teaches us that using it would be a really bad idea. And so Prothero is a way of giving us a lens for saying, it's important not just to know my own faith, and not just to know why I feel something or why I believe something, but also to know what I think. One thing he says that I think is a really good point that he makes is he says, sometimes we feel like by teaching religion, it's narrowing people's options. He said it's like we think that if you teach someone a religion, you're telling them you must believe this, and that if you like it, you'll embrace it, and if you don't like it, you'll never be religious, and you'll reject it. And he compares that in an analogy to something I really think is healthy. He says that's like thinking that by teaching a person to speak English, that you're telling them they'll never speak another language. Or that's like telling somebody, if you want to learn many instruments, you should never learn any because it would narrow you. He says by learning one religion, by being taught one religion, it will help a person understand other religious interests. In the same way that the best way to learn 5 languages is to begin by learning one, and the best way to play 7 instruments is to begin by playing your first. And so he has a lot of concerns about saying that we're religiously open and putting a coexist sticker on the back of our car, and then not knowing anything about the religions that those symbols represent. I think it's an incredible appeal. I think it's very strong, and I think it's something all of us can think about as we think about our own level of religious literacy. I encourage you to check this book out. He's written some other really strong titles. We might talk about those in the future, but that's Religious Literacy by Stephen Prothero. See you later.